was half of the most entertaining duo on Monday Night Raw, but his championship run is remembered for one of the most controversial and embarrassing title losses of the modern era. The Universal title went from being involved in one of the best angles on the show to a geriatric part-timer. Today, we're asking a simple question. Was Kevin Owens a brilliant character ruined by bad booking, or was he the ultimate paper champion? Welcome back to Rate That Reign, the show where we take the emotion out of professional wrestling and judge world title runs on a strict 100-point mathematical scale. We take the guesswork out of wrestling to finally settle the score on who had the best title reign of all time. We will be scoring every champion a maximum of 20 points across 5 categories: the bookends, the in-ring performance, character work, crowd connection, and legacy. So let's find out exactly where the prize fighter lands on the Rate That Reign leaderboard. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my last video on Jack Swagger's miserable World Heavyweight Championship reign. I'm sure we can do a lot better than that today. Category 1, the bookends. Arguably the two most important elements to a good world title reign is how you win it and how you lose it. The strange thing about Kevin Owens' Universal title reign is that he didn't have much agency in either moment. But first, let's set the scene. To understand how Kevin Owens won the Universal Championship, we have to talk about the disaster that happened just 24 hours earlier. At SummerSlam 2016, the fresh newcomer to the Raw roster, Finn Balor, defeated Seth Rollins to become the inaugural Universal Champion. In a match that's mainly remembered for two things: the crowd booing the big red belt and the unfortunate injury that Finn would suffer. During the match, Seth powerbombed Balor into the barricade, resulting in a dislocated shoulder. The very next night, a heartbroken Balor would be forced to relinquish the newly won belt. WWE panicked. The man that they had just put all their efforts and plans behind was now no longer available. They needed a new top guy on Raw, and fast. This would lead to a fatal 4-way elimination match between Owens, Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Big Cass. And then, this would happen. For seemingly no reason at all, Triple H would return to pedigree Roman Reigns on the outside of the ring, before then turning on his former protege Seth Rollins, thus quite literally handing the Universal Championship to Kevin Owens. This was a genuinely shocking moment at the time, and the fans in attendance were going absolutely crazy for it. The win was indeed shocking, but it instantly defined one of the biggest criticisms that I have for Kevin Owens' entire reign. He didn't win the title on his own. Whilst it did make for great entertaining TV, and it set up a future WrestleMania match between The Game and Rollins, it did come at a cost to KO's credibility. But if you think that the start of his reign was controversial, the end was an absolute massacre. After a respectable 188 days as champion, Owens defended the belt against Goldberg at Fastlane 2017, after his best friend Chris Jericho accepted the challenge on his behalf. Just as the match was about to get underway, Chris Jericho's music would hit, distracting Kevin Owens for long enough to be hit with a spear and a jackhammer combo, and the match was over in just 22 seconds. Losing a world title in a sub-minute squash to a part-timer who'd hardly wrestled a full match in a decade was a devastating blow to his credibility. I understand how Goldberg was booked at the time, but it's such a letdown to see a reign end in these circumstances. And similarly to Kofi Kingston's world title reign, this one would also end in a squash. Whilst the way in which he won the title was a genuine surprise to us all, I can't give Kevin Owens a high score here just because of how flat the loss was. I'm going to give KO a 10 out of 20 here. Category 2, in-ring and defences. A champion's legacy is built on who they beat, but when you look at the actual statistics of this 188-day run, the maths was pretty brutal. Owens was booked as one of the weaker champions of the decade. Almost every major title defense relied on the exact same played out formula, a heavy interference from Chris Jericho. In fact, WWE leaned so hard into this cowardly heel persona that they literally booked a no disqualification match at the 2017 Royal Rumble, in which Jericho was locked inside a shark cage suspended above the ring. And incredibly, Owens still couldn't win the match cleanly on his own. He only retained the belt because Braun Strowman interfered, power slamming Roman Reigns through a table. Looking back at some of his title defences during his reign, it's hard to believe that this is the very same Kevin Owens that would beat John Cena as clean as a whistle on his very first night on the main roster, just 1 year prior. Mechanically, Owens would put on some fantastic physical performances with the likes of Seth Rollins, but the repetitive, dirty finishes completely tanked his in-ring prestige, and for that reason, I'm giving Kevin Owens a score of 11 out of 20 for his in-ring and defences. Category 3, character work and storylines. This category is where the math swings wildly in the other direction. While the in-ring booking might have left more to be desired, Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho were undeniably the best thing on WWE television every single week, during an era of pretty stale TV. The pairing just worked brilliantly, and you could tell that the pair had a real charisma with each other. Jericho was magic. They were hilarious, they were arrogant, and they were inseparable. I often see people posting about this pairing even to this day, in particular a segment in the build to the Survivor Series that year, where the pair ran down James Ellsworth, calling him Chins McMahon. This is honestly some of the best work of both men's careers, and considering the number of times Jericho's hit the nail on the head, that's really saying something. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and Jericho accepting a match against Goldberg on Owens' behalf was the final straw. However, it's not all bad news, as this would culminate in arguably the best Raw segment of the decade, the iconic Festival of Friendship segment. The Festival of Friendship was organised by Jericho as a celebration of the pair's month-long alliance, with him going over the top and showering KO with gifts, including a magician and even a surprise Goldberg appearance. Owens then told Jericho that he also had a gift for him, presenting him with a new clipboard. Of course, Jericho initially reacted with joy, thinking it was a new List of Jericho, until he realised his own name was the only one written on what was actually the List of KO. Now, I hate to say it, but this is genuine professional wrestling cinema, and for that segment alone, Kevin Owens scores highly on character work and storylines. I'm giving KO a massive 19 out of 20 here. Category 4. Crowd connection. Did the crowd care? Yeah, absolutely. Owens was getting massive reactions, both as a beloved comic heel alongside Jericho and as a despicable villain after he turned on him. However, there is a valid criticism to be made here. Was the crowd cheering for the Universal Champion, or were they just cheering for Chris Jericho's scarf and clipboard? Owens often felt like a supporting character in Jericho's storylines, despite being the one holding the most important prize in the company. I still think that Owens is worthy of a respectable 14 out of 20 here though. Category 5. Legacy. And finally, it's time to assess the legacy of Kevin Owens' reign. How do we remember this 188-day run today? For many fans, myself included, the Festival of Friendship is a top 5 Raw moment of the modern era. But the ultimate legacy of his reign is that it was sacrificed to build to Brock vs Goldberg, a match that didn't really need the title to be involved. KO and Jericho would go on to have a match for the US title at that year's WrestleMania, in the second match of the night. It was a real shame to see where they ended up on the night after such a compelling storyline during the build-up. And to make matters worse, there's a legendary backstage story from WrestleMania 33. After Owens and Jericho finished the match, Owens walked through the curtain, found Vince McMahon and said, "Are we good?" McMahon looked up at him and simply replied, "No." It was a genuinely heartbreaking end to an era that started with so much promise. KO gets a 12 out of 20 here from me. The final tally. So, when you add it all up, Kevin Owens finishes with a final score of 66 out of 100. It was a reign that was defined by an incredible paradox. He was the most entertaining character on the show, but arguably the weakest booked champion in a long time. He provided us with endless laughs and a legendary betrayal, but when the bell rang, WWE simply refused to let the prize fighter actually fight. Now this rating of 66 puts KO comfortably in first place in our rankings, but it's still very early days, and I'm sure it won't be long before he gets surpassed. So do you agree with the maths? Did I score the in-ring defenses too harshly, or did the Goldberg burial really ruin the whole thing? Let me know your score in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next time on Rate That Reign. Thanks for watching.